October 8th Planning Board to order tonight. If you have any public comments that have nothing to do with what's on the agenda tonight, please go up to the podium and state your name and what you would like us to consider sometime in the future. Okay, there's usually nothing. Thank you. Paul, the minutes of September 24th.
Madam Chair, I recommend the approval of the minutes of September 24th, 2024, with some minor corrections.
Second.
Okay. It's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
And first on the agenda is an approval not required. The applicant is FWG LLC, plan of land to revise lot lines between lots 1 and 2 to provide adequate side setback for lot 1 and to establish compliant lot coverage for lot 2 at 51 Cape Club Road and 47 Cape Club Road. Is there someone here to present this?
I don't believe there's anyone here to present it.
Okay,
I can answer any questions you might have.
Does it meet all the zoning requirements?
Yes, it does. And my recommendation is that you endorse as presented, without regard to buildability
Without
or zoning
buildability.
compliance.
would somebody please?
I move that we endorse this plan without regard to buildability of the lots.
Lots. And second, okay. So Jim and Bob. And any questions? Okay, all in favor? Aye. Okay. And then we move on to public hearing. The applicant is House to Home Development LLC, definitive plan application to create an 11-lot subdivision at 0, 2, and 20 Lewis Street and 0 Old Bayberry Lane with a map number here.
I recuse myself from this
Oh,
hearing, so.
okay. Ooh,
Ooh,
uh-oh,
You're fine.
we are?
Okay.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Paul Seberg from Grady Consulting, the engineer on the project. So at the last meeting, we were asked to stake the center line of the proposed roadway, which we did on the 30th of September, so that's all set. And then there were some remaining items from the conformance list that we received at the last meeting. That we didn't get to go through the entire list, and I'd like to just go through the remaining items on that list, if you wouldn't mind. I believe the first item was site easements. And we have added a site distance detail on sheet 8. And we are proposing to remove all the trees within the right-of-way to make sure there's no issues as far as site distance is concerned. Oh, there it is. So here's our site distance detail, and it's in conformance with the requirements that the town engineer sent over. He did make one change to this detail. He's asking us to remove this one right here since it doesn't apply to site distance. But the minimum site distance is required is 225 feet. And we were just over that at around 249 feet. The next item was 305-26 regarding open space. As of right now, we're not proposing any sort of open space for the development or any parks or anything like that at this time. So we just leave that to the board for comment regarding that matter.
Jim?
well, you know, my preference is always for cluster, but they have the right to keep all the land private, and that's okay too. They're actually meeting everything that we're supposed to ask for.
Correct.
Not what we like, but what we're, so I think that's good.
The next item is in regards to 305-27 B and C regarding site grading and keeping the natural topography of the site. With this site, it's very level, flat site. We're not really proposing any major changes to topography. The only changes in grading are really due
Excuse
to.
me, can you switch back to the map, the plan that shows topography while we're talking about it?
Sure.
Just so we're on the same page, somebody's
Yep.
looking.
So this is the existing condition sheet, which shows the topography without the proposed development. As you can see, there's not a lot of contour showing up on this, meaning it's a very flat site. It really only changes about, I think it's approximately 4 feet, maybe 6 feet over the entire site.
So that's a 2-foot condor.
2-foot contours, correct. Yep. And as far as grading is concerned, with the proposed roadway, we actually have to, since the site's so flat, we actually have to create some elevation change in order to pitch the stormwater to the catch basins. So the grade changes proposed are minimal grade changes within the roadway in order to have enough slope to convey that stormwater to the catch basins, which is approximately 2 to 2.5 feet in elevation change with the roadway. So there's very minimal cuts and fills proposed for this development. The next item was regarding sidewalks, and I discussed with the town planner this morning, as far as the trees and the sidewalks, there's a lot of talk about concerns about the roots end up, poking through and ruining the sidewalks over time. So what I recommended we do for this one is we actually move the sidewalk adjacent to the curbing of the roadway, then move the proposed trees right up to the right-of-way line. So we add as much separation as possible between the trees and the sidewalk, so we can kind of reduce those impacts to the sidewalk.
Somebody 20 years from now will be glad you did that.
Right, and, yeah, before the town, cross-section kind of shows a grass strip, sidewalk, and then another grass strip. But if we move everything closer to the roadway, then we can have a wider grass strip for those trees to have room to grow. The next item was 30533, a street sign. We are proposing a street sign at the very start of the subdivision roadway. And as far as the name, the applicant would like to propose the name Sail Away Lane for the subdivision. And I think the last remaining item was regarding streetlights. We're proposing one streetlight here, and another streetlight right at the start of the cul-de-sac, and a third streetlight over in this area here. And then as far as the additional comments that were remaining from the town engineer, he requested that we add some additional monuments that we were missing. There was a couple down in here on some angle points along the perimeter that we just didn't have proposed monuments, which we're going to add on the latest revisions to the plan, as well as the easements. We recommended not having the same monuments with the easement markers, just so they're not confused with property lines between property owners. So we're recommending iron rods to be set on the easement corners instead of concrete bounds. The iron rod is basically rebar with a cap on the top of it. That's it. I'd be happy to answer any questions the board may have.
Do you have any questions? Paul, do you have any questions? Anybody? Yes, sir.
I have some
No,
questions.
Go up there and state your name, please. They're televising us.
I am Bill Flaherty. I live at 43 Thatcher's Lane, which is down at the end. And I have a couple questions in regards to traffic and directions or whatnot. So for instance, at the top of our street, we're right across from the XL Gas, and within a short distance, there's many roads that intersect coming, so there's a lot of traffic out front there, number one, on 28. And people now, because of Waze and whatnot, they're starting to cut through anyways, our street off of Acapesket to get out, or come back and get in. Well, some of the things that have big concern is at the top of the street, we have like a little consignment shop where it's all boxed in, and one of the neighbors across the street and then another one all have cones out because people are parking in the way. So there's bottleneck naturally already at the end of the street. And I think that one of the things that we have for concerns is the fact that down the end of the street, where it turns from Thatcher into Lewis, right in that area, which is gonna be the entrance to the building site here, is that I'd like to see that they can't come past the houses. During construction, it's gonna be crazy anyways with all the trucks and everything. And right here, if you could pull it up, we have the street intersection. Thank you. Yeah, so if I could point out right here, obviously, is the opening to where we're gonna do it. This is Lewis, this is Thatcher, like for instance, I'm right here. And right here is an easement where I think that at one time was supposed to be a road right here, quite frankly, all right? And I thought that it might be, or we thought, some of us, thought it might be a good idea if they could actually open this up so that you could actually make this a direct in here, and either they could do it one way this way, so if there was a need for ambulance or bus to turn around or something like that, they could, make that a road back out into Shorewood, or quite frankly, just box it off and make it so they could back in and come out, so there wasn't crazy amount of traffic here, which is just a nightmare at the end of the road to stop. You understand what I'm saying?
I think the planning board has heard there are lots of problems there with that. So that's one of the things I think we are going to need to be discussing in greater detail.
Okay, well, I wanted,
I'm sorry, I really don't understand.
okay, Jim, for instance, I think my neighbor said that you guys were gonna come and look at
Yeah, I
it.
know the area well, I know Thatcher's
Right.
Way, I know the
So
store, I
right
shop
here-
there, I'm very
right
familiar
here
with it.
Is
I think you're talking Thatcher's Way and Lewis, you're talking about.
right here,
Yeah.
exactly, Thatcher's, Lewis, and right now it just looks like this, but this right here is overgrown, but, you know, people use it as a walkway, but this,
Oh,
at
you're
one
saying
time.
that's a paper road that's overgrown, is that what you're saying? It's not
Yes,
really a
at one time it
road.
was supposed to be a road, is my
Is that-
thought.
It's a paper street.
It's a paper street.
Yep.
So it's private. Or is it public?
It would,
Is it on
it's
the
a-
list of public streets or
It is
private?
not.
Okay,
It-
so it's private, so that, my understanding is that's to the two abutters.
Right.
They own the middle, and they're the ones that have to do that, we don't. You're talking about a piece of private I'm sorry. I'm
Please, go
talking about
ahead.
something I know, I shouldn't,
I-
I should have asked permission. Okay, I'm used to doing this, sorry. My understanding is that's a private road, and I believe, they'll correct me if I'm wrong, that the two abutters own to the middle of the road. And it's up to them to do that. So you're asking us to do something on private property, which we don't have any right to do. That's, I think that's what he's asking for. That's up to the neighbors. We don't own that land, and this developer doesn't own that land. The people on either side of the street own that land.
So it appears, okay, where the neighbor next to me, his fence goes along, and then the other neighbor is quite a distance. It seems like that walkway is a right-of-way, you know, for the public, which has been used that way for years and years and years. So if it's been used that way for years, doesn't it at some point become a public way?
It's complicated.
I can tell you it has to be taken. Okay, when you own, private land can be taken through adverse possession, or somebody can declare rights to use it and make it, and then own it. But if they haven't gone to court and done that, you're asking us to tell people that own private property what they can and cannot do with it.
Okay, so,
And we can't do that.
We can't do it.
okay, so at the same
Go to the
time.
neighbors and ask them to do it.
Okay, so at the same time, that is a huge problem, you know, in our small street in regards to traffic flow. How are we gonna fix that?
So if somebody went to the neighbors and said, would you mind if they cleared this and make a little turnaround to make it more safe, and they said, okay, we could do it. Is that what you're asking?
I'm just saying,
We can't make this guy do it, he doesn't own it.
well, my thought was that because it's been a public walkway for so many years,
That has to be done
well,
by
I'm
court.
just saying what I thought, first of all, okay?
Okay.
And, you know, therefore, regardless, it's really quite a nightmare already with traffic there. And so how have all these new cars and everything that are coming in to that intersection now, how are we gonna fix the flow? Especially up top of our street already, with the shop and everything, and all those roads that come into our street, can we make it, a dead end?
You're talking about doing something on Lewis,
On
on
Thatcher's?
Thatcher, which this applicant doesn't own. And we have no right to tell him what to do.
Well, I'm saying, I live there, and then my neighbors live on Thatcher's. Can we make that a dead end so we don't have all the traffic?
It is a private street, am I correct, Thatcher's?
Thatcher's is a public way.
Oh, it's a public way, sorry.
Lewis is the
Lewis is
private way.
Yeah.
Lewis is private, okay.
So I think the short answer to your question is probably not, because it is a public way. But it sounded like perhaps the main concern was construction vehicles coming in and out,
Well,
during the construction of the
Yeah, I
subdivision.
understand that'll be what it'll be for, however long, a couple of years. But regardless, it's gonna add a lot more cars, a little more traffic.
Okay.
And, I just think that it seems to be, there should be some sort of solution. If it's meant to come in on Lewis and not come in on Thatcher's.
Yeah, so I think, if I may,
Yeah.
I think the applicant has the ability to work with, future construction companies to limit the traffic flow on Thatcher's, right? They could require their vehicles to come in off of Acapesket, come down Lewis instead of coming down Thatcher. The issue with future property owners, I don't see the ability for them to control where those future residents come in and out of their own property. That's a tough one.
Okay,
I
so
understand.
just, if I may, just one more question then. So perhaps, if this person next to me, where their fence goes like this, let's say, I'm looking at this wrong, well anyways, what I'm saying, if I got the one person that's next to me to say, okay, we can give up this little piece of land here, and the people that are building in this development, that would be here and here, excuse me. So, I don't know if this is supposed to be the treatment plant, but my neighbor here, say if he gave up, where his fence goes like this, he gave up a little piece and they gave up a little piece here, then you could actually have a turnaround and block that off at the same time.
So you mean block off Thatcher, is what you mean?
Yes, we'd like to, and that way you could have just a little place that they could, if a bus or something, they want to come down and back in there and turn around and come out.
I see. So access would be restricted to Lewis Street.
Yeah.
I think that's problematic. Didn't we just say that Lewis is private and Thatcher's public?
Right, so that's the twofold problem, is that now you're
We're
altering.
stepping on
Well,
somebody's
what
land.
I'm trying to say is that you said you have to get those two abutters to say, okay, we'll allow the street to go through. What I'm saying is just take a small piece of that and a small piece of that, so somebody could turn around in that area and come out, and then you could block it so that the people aren't coming down our street all the time to go into their development.
So what I'm understanding, I think, is that you're looking to give up two pieces of land so that you can make a T-turn there on Lewis.
What I'm trying to say is this the development, Lewis Thatcher's? So if my neighbor right here said, okay, I don't mind, I'll give this little piece of land that I'm not using, and they say, we'll give a little piece of land right here. So if if a bus or something were needed to come down here, they could just back in and turn around and go back out. Go ahead.
Please state your name, if you will.
Vinnie Rappa, 39 Thatcher's Lane. I was here 2 weeks ago, talking about the traffic situation coming down Thatcher's Lane. I went home that night and I drew up a plan to barricade Thatcher's Lane. I sent it to the board. Has the board received it?
I believe they have. We can double check.
It's exactly what Billy is talking about. Putting a barricade down at the end of Thatcher's Lane, and only cars going down Thatcher's Lane will go down and then come back out. Cars coming into the subdivision come to a Cape Set, down Lewis, into the subdivision, come out, right turn only, and go back out that way. And there's also a turnaround shown on there. Now, I thought there were some houses there that were gonna be bought by the subdivision so that they'd have more room. I don't know if that's still true or not.
Yeah, I guess to address the issue with making modifications to a public way, so there's a few things that you need to consider. Obviously, first responders, you know, you can't, I don't believe this board can make any changes to the way in which Thatcher's Lane operates. Certainly without the input of the fire department and the police department, because they have to be able to get down there. And then there's the complication of overburdening Lewis Street with this new traffic flow. So, I mean, I understand the concern. Like I said, I think that there's some flexibility with controlling how construction vehicles access the site and work on the site, but I don't see a way to change the traffic flow for the future residents who live in this cul-de-sac.
Anything gonna be done with Thatcher's Lane to make it a little wider?
So we checked with the engineering division, they don't have anything on the books for work upcoming on Thatcher Street, or Thatcher's Lane, I believe it's Thatcher's Lane.
Has the board traveled down there to take a look?
I haven't yet.
Okay. We have, and you're absolutely right, it's very tight, especially when cars are parked on the side of the road. I know what it's like to get out of Acapesket, typically in the morning and the afternoon, it's challenging.
Yes.
So obviously, these future residents are gonna be making decisions about how they come in and out of and access their property. They may decide to just do Acapesket, cause that's a lot easier than Thatcher's, but I don't see a way for the board to control the way those residents come in and out of their property.
Okay,
And the only way that I know that you can get the road widened is that you apply for it, and the list is
Quite long.
hugely long.
Yeah, and I mean, Thatcher's is a public way, so, as you know, a lot of roads in town, so the town is focused on making improvements on roads that absolutely need them first, clearly. But as I said, they didn't have anything on the books currently for any work to be done on Thatcher's Lane.
well, maybe after all the construction that's gonna go on, maybe we'll have to get it repaired.
Yeah.
Well, there's also a dirt road at the other end of that lot
Yeah.
that pops up.
Nobody can hear you in TV
I'm
land
sorry.
over there.
Excuse me, but there's also another road at the end of that lot, a dirt road at the other end of that lot that goes right out to Acapesket.
I don't understand. The other end of what road? Give me the name of the road you're talking about.
The end of this house is down here with a street that goes out to Acapesket.
It doesn't go through, does it?
Avalon.
It doesn't go through.
The subdivision roadway doesn't go through.
I've tried it.
And I guess, I know this probably doesn't make any difference, but there was, I believe there's a lot right on Acapesket with some flags and sticks. I don't know if somebody's putting a house there, what's gonna happen, but obviously that would have been the best place to go in and out.
So just for the record, I'll just show everyone the challenge that's presented here. So this is our interactive GIS. As you can see, a private road is shown in red, which is the Lewis Street connection. Thatcher's Lane is shown in black, which is public, as is Shorewood. And so this was the beginning of what was being
Can
described.
you switch to the satellite view so we can see that
Yep.
I grew up in this neighborhood. I believe as a youth, there was a pathway through that it wasn't straight, but there was a way to cut through there along 40 years ago.
There is, people still use it.
Sure. So this is what would be considered a paper street.
Right.
Part of the subdivision or the division of land way, way back. I mean, these lots date back a long time. So, you know, in order to do any sort of work here, a lot of legal research would need to be done as to who owns that section of the way, we'll call it. But the point I was trying to make was that, you know, in terms of can you adjust what's going on Thatcher's, again, it's a public way, so that would be a decision by the town. I don't think the board has the ability to make adjustments to it. And then Lewis Street, because it's private, secondarily, it's also a challenge because it's not under your purview to make any sort of adjustments to that road either, so. But I suspect that, you know, your future residents who live in this area will ultimately be making decisions as they come out onto this intersection, whether or not they want to go out to Acapesket or Thatcher's, and they have the right to do that, to make that decision.
So isn't, excuse me, isn't that, thank you. What I wanted to say is, isn't this not at the end of the plot, isn't that a road right here that goes up to Acapesket?
Could you use the mouse, please? We can see, so you can reach it. It'd be better if you could just show them how to do it. We'll all understand what you're saying.
Okay, so obviously this is our street, this is the plot, 14 acres or whatever it is. And out onto Acapesket right here, there's a dirt road at the end of this plot of land. So why can't you use that as a road as well? So if you had an in and an out,
It's private property.
the dirt road is? Okay, well, I'm just asking because I see the name on the road.
Well,
Are you talking about Old Bayberry?
I believe that is.
Okay, so that's behind it. Can you show him, Jed, where that is?
see,
So look up right here. So it's, Old Bayberry is right
the
here.
black lines are public and the red lines are private. And if it's not shown in either one of those, it's not really a road.
So this is the dirt road that you're referring to.
Okay.
And it ends right here, there's a bunch of
Okay.
hedge, and it
Right.
doesn't connect through. Again, an old paper street that just never was connected.
Okay, I just want to ask questions, thank you.
You're welcome.
Yes, sir. Please go up to the microphone and state your name.
I had the same problem when I first saw this. I thought you could drive through there.
Hi, my name is Paul Glass, and I live on Acapesket. I may have come late and may have already explained this, but based on the rendering here, is the traffic flow supposed to come to Thatcher from 28 to Thatcher into the development?
It could go either way. They could come in from Acapesket.
Or from Acapesket?
From Acapesket or from,
Either or, okay.
yeah.
Well, there's another development already happening, or already been approved for Acapesket, for another 28, or I think it's another 12 buildings or 24 units or something like that. It's Acapesket Village or something it's been called. There's gonna be a lot of traffic on Acapesket. It already is a bottleneck on Acapesket trying to get out to 28 to begin with. Adding this development with most of the traffic, if it's, based on what I'm hearing, if it's gonna be going back out to Acapesket, it's gonna be a nightmare, particularly during the summer. So, you know, I'm all for developments, but in that exit onto Acapesket is gonna be crazy.
Yeah. I mean, I hate to say this, but I think the town needs more lights.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's just what I was thinking.
I face the same thing coming out of Boxbury Hill onto 151, that you got a flashing yellow light. You can sit there for 20 minutes sometimes, and I know that, I'm in that area all the
Yeah,
time.
You know, I've
and
been
it's-
advocating that maybe
Yeah.
get a traffic light at 28
Yeah.
or something, you know.
Yeah,
'cause,
they need some traffic coordination.
Even
something.
a yellow flashing light is not gonna do it. You know,
No.
it's hard enough trying to get out of,
Yeah, yeah,
No,
I'm
that's a
doing this
light
on a
that's
daily
been needing
basis,
to
and even during the
happen.
wintertime, it's bad enough.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. Yeah, there are several places in town that need lights.
Yeah, that's the needing to be.
Okay,
enacted
You know what it's like
for a
trying to get out onto Woods Hole
long
Road with
time.
the ferry traffic.
Oh, gee.
But that is a Monday night meeting with the selectmen?
Yeah,
Probably.
Not here?
Yeah.
They're the
Mr.
ones in
Lewis?
charge of that, not us?
Mr. Lewis, I would like to acknowledge that we have received the slideshow that you and your son put together, and it
Okay.
will be sent to the board members, and thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. Could it be sent to developer as well for his
I don't see why
consideration
not.
for the
Yep.
name?
Yep.
Okay, thank you. Maybe the town should consider some new signage that says for these situations. Turn right to go left. I don't know. That would be safer, right? Turn around somewhere
I
else,
do that a lot in this town.
like over by the car wash or something like that.
Or perhaps on the way into Falmouth, it says, you cannot make a left turn in this town.
Right, no left turns.
Right turns only.
Right, right.
Well, everybody ignore that
Just
anyway.
for example.
Wait a minute,
wait,
by the way, for the TV audience, this is Phil Lewis.
Yes, 3 Thatchers. Thank you.
So we grade our intersections, and one of the worst intersections we have is Davis Straits and, is it Dillingham?
Yeah.
And it's terrible.
Yeah.
And it's a much heavier this, and we can't get a light for that.
Yeah.
It's like the traffic is 10 times what we have here. So,
Is that because it's a state
State
highway?
highway, yeah.
well,
And
28 is a
is-
state highway.
It's the same.
Right, that's what I mean,
I'm
so,
just saying, but we have no control over it. We've been talking about it for years.
Yeah,
We can't do it.
yeah.
okay.
It's not our job.
I guess my first question was, I had submitted a 2-page sheet was the board gonna go through these, or should we just discuss it now? It's related to the safety plan or during construction.
It's your letter, why don't we
Okay,
take it up? You can
Sure.
present it.
yeah,
And that
just,
way the audience can also hear.
okay, sure. I didn't know if you were gonna discuss it later, so we can just do it now?
This is the time.
Okay. So our primary concern is just safety on Thatcher's Lane, which has been voiced by the neighbors as well. We do have 2 youth on the small street, Thatcher's Lane, with special needs. And my son in particular, he has a special needs school bus. They back into the driveway twice a day, to pick him up and to drop him off. So that's a concern, just because that's a regular event, even in the summer, because he's going to summer school. So there's a little time off between school and summer school, but in general, that's just a general thing. And I was wondering what we had mentioned 2 weeks ago that there would be a safety plan. So I was wondering, is there a safety plan yet, or what it would look like, when it would be discussed or presented?
We don't have one, and I don't know that we can create one for the development.
Yeah, I don't know what you're referring to, so if you could remind us, I
Well, just
apologize.
these safety concerns about road construction vehicles coming in and out,
Yep.
for, heavy equipment and turning off of a major highway onto the small street with the business right on the corner, our street, our house with our situation with the school bus, having to come just off the road, the main road, and then it's in the middle of the road, it turns left a little bit to have room, and then it backs up. So if some big truck's coming around, then there's an issue coming in and out. So those just kind of general safety issues. I don't know, can you demand that the builder and the construction people use Lewis Street?
I would advise the board to ask the applicant and to see if the applicant would be willing to do so.
Okay, but in general, there's no safety plan that will be,
Well, no, because that applies to just about every neighborhood in
Right.
town.
okay,
Uh,
all right.
So.
That's not part of what we can do
Yeah.
as the planning board.
Okay, I got that impression from 2 weeks ago. I thought you said that we'd work on a safety plan.
We can only give advice to the developer as to what we think might be right, but,
Okay.
you know,
Well, could you pass along our information that I presented here
of course.
to them? That would be helpful. So just the whole presentation was just about this situation that has already been described, and we have the gas station, we have the business. And then I did have a question, I guess there's a mouse here somewhere. With I did look at the middle of the road, right? The stakes are at the middle of the road for the proposed new road. Yep. And there's just a big offset. Here's Thatcher's Lane here, and here's the middle of that road is really on this far edge. It just, in my view, and I'm sure my neighbors could agree, that, here's a car coming down Lewis Street, it's gonna turn on Thatcher's. Well, here's somebody going to the subdivision, and they have to move over to the left side of the road to go basically to the left side of the road of Thatcher's to get into their lane to go into the subdivision. Does that make sense?
I don't see why
I don't see that.
I don't see why they would have to move over to the left.
I'm just saying the way people drive, right? If they're going here, they know they have to move over to the left side of the street. So here's somebody coming down Lewis,
Yeah,
and they're gonna be coming in here while these people are moving over right in front of them. So why is the street offset so drastically?
I mean, I don't,
I can show you one in my neighborhood in Hatchville. They're like that all over the place, and
But we're building a
And
new
people-
road here.
and
Why,
people- and
why,
people- well,
why set it up that way? Why can't it be 10 feet over?
ask the engineer.
So the roads aren't offset the way you're describing them. It was designed so that the pavement was pretty much aligned the best we could with the proposed roadway. There's a roadway kind of comes around that corner, it turns slightly, and it's pretty well aligned with the proposed roadway, how we have
I mean,
it.
I saw the stakes, like you could
Right.
stand behind so you could see the stakes, and Thatcher's is, this side, let's see, where's that mouse? So here are the stakes, right, going down the middle, and you can see even on this drawing, it lines up with that side of the road, and that's the case. Did everybody go through the walkthrough and see the plot with the stakes?
I did not,
No,
no.
I haven't yet.
But Jed, doesn't that have something to do with our bylaw? Because the entrance to that has to be wider than a normal roadway.
well, I think if you were to zoom in onto that particular section, you can see that, so it's up at the top
Oh,
in the ribbon-ish.
you probably
Yeah, right up there. So you can see that that lines up
Right.
fairly well with the center of Thatcher.
So this would be the right side, if you're pulling, you're gonna be in the right lane, your right side of the roadway coming down Thatcher's Lane, this is gonna be the right side of the roadway of the proposed development. They're pretty much right across from each other.
Okay. Well, if the board is gonna go make a visit, if you could just take a look at that.
But what he is saying is that, you see, that's wider there, the entranceway is wider, but it doesn't follow all the way through, and that's what's, I think, causing the problem.
It's wider on paper, right.
Yes, on
The road-
But it's not going to be paved wider there. It's our bylaw that requires the entrance to be wider.
So there will be actually a tapered curve here, a curb
As far as I know.
or pavement, like a a flared pavement.
There's a slight, it's almost going right into the existing pavement, the pavement's almost going right into the existing pavement, there's a slight taper as.
No, I'm saying on your new street, you're gonna taper the pavement off on either side.
Right.
Yes.
Go around it, yep, correct.
All right. Well, it
So-
just appears from my view of the stakes, where the stakes are, they're just on the other end of the road.
Now, I understand what you're saying.
Yeah. Okay. All right, that's all I had, and then if you could pass along the video, we had a proposed street name. My son loves hawks, and we used to go out to the field and watch the hawks, so he wanted to call it like Hawk View or Hawk Lane, or I don't know. Is there already a Hawk Street in town?
There's a Hawk's Way, I think.
A Hawk's Way.
And West
That's far away though. It won't be.
But you can't have two streets with the same name anywhere in
No,
town.
Hawk View. Right? I don't know. Anyway.
Never heard that one.
We'd appreciate any consideration for that. Thank you.
But I thank you also for that video. It's charming. And tell your son that, too.
I will.
Another quick question, so there's absolutely no, plan to widen Thatcher at all? Because it's really a narrow street.
Yeah, that would have to go before, you'd have to apply to the town for that. That goes before the Board of Selectmen, and they select what roads get widened or repaired or repaved. So if people really want to get that road widened, they need to get on that list.
There's no way, to,
No.
influence the developer to help, to widen the street?
They can't. It's a
Prior, no.
public road. It would have to be done by our DPW. And I don't know if you could make any kind of a plea
So-
for,
Yeah, it's not New York
What
City.
does one have to do in order to get, DPW to,
Go to selectmen's meeting
Authorize.
Monday night, public address, and bring the issue up on the public comment.
Yeah.
And then keep coming and keep coming and keep coming. It's a Monday night meeting, not a Tuesday night meeting. We're not the ones
Yeah,
that,
and it's right at the beginning. They
It's
have
right
the
at the beginning. You
public
can-
comment section,
and
and,
the town manager gives direction to the
Right.
DPW. All the people that you wanna do are all run by the selectmen, not us.
Yeah.
They control what you want to do. And that's,
something you guys would, consider
they can't,
for Thatcher?
no, they can't do
they
it.
don't own it.
yeah.
It's a public way, so they can't do anything. It's the town that would have to do it. And that's why Jim was saying, go to the select board meeting.
It looks like it's about to be a hot mess.
Yeah,
Oh. Thank you all for coming tonight, and I understand that we're going to continue this.
I just wanna, just for reference, I just wanna bring it up, there's streets in town where there's telephone poles
Right.
that the selectmen have let go for 30 or 40 years, right in the middle of a street like that, there's a telephone pole right in the middle. It happens to be Katy Hatch Road and, what is it, so, I can't remember it right now, but anyways, there's all kinds of things that the town, the select board and other boards other than this have let go. The hot mess is a lot of places.
So,
I don't know about the others, but I know about this one.
Right.
if you drive around town, you'll see a lot of examples. So I need a motion to close the hearing, if you're all in favor of closing it tonight. Is there any problem with closing it?
no?
So I would not recommend closing,
Oh, you would
simply
not.
because the applicant is still revising plans based on the
Oh.
latest engineering referral. So we want to make sure that you can accept those plans.
Okay.
But if you are so inclined, you could recommend staff provide you with a draft motion for the next meeting, which we've already started preparing, because in my opinion, they're almost at the end of all of their revisions. So they should be ready at the next meeting, provided we get the plans in enough time. They should be ready for your approval and all of the
So
conditions.
if we're going to do that overlap then for the next meeting, that we give approval, we're also going to have to say, we would like you all to review it to make sure
Correct.
that all of these are on the plan,
Yep,
okay?
yep.
So we're all in favor then of asking them to prepare a draft approval and to review
So
the plan to make sure.
we need a motion to continue.
Yes.
I move that we continue this until, when's the next?
Meeting.
No, he was,
October 22nd.
October 22nd.
but you are gonna draft.
Yeah, you still.
Yeah.
Okay, right, we're doing
It's,
both.
it's a dual thing.
Two
Jim.
things at one time.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Provided,
I got it.
okay.
provided that that continuance date works for the applicant. So we just want to make sure of that.
Okay,
Yes, that works for us.
okay, great. So, you got a motion?
yeah,
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
aye.
Aye.
And in between time, we'll make sure that all of the material that we've got, we send to the applicant so that they're well informed of all the public comments that we've received.
Okay.
And Mr. Lewis suggested and asked if you would please send, okay, thank you. Okay, so, we're moving on. Public meeting, applicant is Stephen Marsh, definitive plan, application to create a 3-lot subdivision at 0 Old Barnstable Road. And I think there's, do we have a letter asking for the,
Yes, so you have,
didn't you?
you have two items. You have an email asking for continuance of the matter until October 22nd. And you also have a halfway signed out, or signed form, extending or continuing the matter for filing with the clerk. So provided that you're okay with this continuance, they'll be back before you on October 22nd, and the deadline for your decision remains the same, which is November 29th.
I'll move to accept the letter for requesting a continuance to October 22nd.
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded, and, oh, John's back, okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Oh, good, now we get on to the good stuff here.
So we're in the town meeting?
Yeah. My understanding is that Bob Mitchell is going to Zoom in, or what, Jed?
So for the record, Jed Cornock, Town Planner, what we will do is if we have substantive questions that we need our consultants to answer or provide some guidance on, we have the ability to call them in. We won't do so until such time that we need them,
Okay.
so that we don't overburden their time. But I am confident that we're in a position where we've addressed the majority of the comments. We do have a couple of items that I do want to walk through with the board as related to Article 36, which is the non-conforming uses or structures, uses, and lots article. However, Madam Chair, you, or standing Madam Chair, I'm trying to
Whatever the heck.
this evening, you would like to perhaps take some of the easier ones out of order, and we'll leave perhaps mixed residential and commercial overlay as well as non-conforming to the end? Is that correct?
Yes, because we get the easier stuff out of the way.
Great. And those should be very quick. So
Okay.
I'm just calling all of them up now, so bear with me.
Well, the first one would be accessory apartments, so if you'll look at that, you'll see red changes in there.
Right, so I will walk you through exactly what you see. And just for the record, there are copies on the table. So these warrant articles importantly include the recommendations that you folks will want to vote tonight. Again, just as a reminder, this is still an open public hearing, so the idea is to take public comment tonight. If there is no public comment, then you can close the hearing and you can start deliberating the contents of these. So I will summarize very quickly what you have in your packets and what's available to the public on the table, and then I'll hand it over back to you for public comment.
Jed, may I ask you a question?
Absolutely.
Because since we're doing these one by one and taking them out of order, I wonder if we can close each one individually and take the vote right when we're fresh discussing it, rather than waiting for the whole discussion. And then we have to go back and vote each one individually.
It is one singular hearing, so I would suggest,
Okay.
just for the purposes of being very safe, that you allow for that hearing to be open, hear all public comment, and perhaps what I can do is just summarize one of the articles for you to show you exactly what that red text means. Then you can take public comment. If there isn't public comment, then you can close the hearing and you can start deliberating the changes that you want to make. And that way you're nice and safe. That way you're not closing hearings and reopening and we get into any sort of procedural issues.
Okay.
All right, so very quickly, I'll just summarize the accessory apartment item for you, and then, like I mentioned, we'll go right to public comment. So, as you can see up on the screen, this is the original language, and I'm just scrolling through. This is the original article language. At the end of the article is your recommendation. So based on what we heard during this public hearing, was that perhaps we want to consider changing the word accessory apartment to accessory dwelling unit to be consistent not only with state law, but with other communities and, such as those things. So what you see here is a recommendation being, you are recommending these changes highlighted in red, okay? And so very quickly, it's just, you can see really quickly that it's just changing accessory apartment to accessory dwelling unit. There are a couple of other items I want to go through, but we can do that a little later, some amendments that we've made to be consistent with state law. And then importantly is the explanation. And so this is what will be printed in the warrant booklet next week. So all of this information is here tonight so that everyone can have an opportunity to see exactly how we are suggesting, we being staff, suggesting that you consider changes based on what you heard from the public. So what I will do at that point is just hand the baton back over to you, Madam Chair, for any outstanding public comment, if there is any. And if there's not, we can close the hearing, or you can close the hearing, and we can start talking about those changes, and you can deliberate in session.
Okay, you've got me totally confused now.
Ask for public comment.
I understand that, but then do we close this one? and
Nope,
vote?
no.
That's what I thought. Okay, now I'm not confused.
Yep.
All right, is there any public comment on this particular article with the changes? It's Article 16. And that's for the,
Accessory apartment.
accessory apartments. Thank you.
ADU.
Can I just ask you, move it back to, we're looking at the red line
Oh, sure.
portion, because that's the changes we're making, right?
Right.
I've read all this, and so it basically is just changing the word out, except for the one paragraph.
Yeah.
Is, everything else is just ADU,
Right.
you know, all the way through, and then that's where you go through it in detail.
Right. So the paragraph, you know, very quickly is simply just the exact text from the Affordable Homes Act with some additional language here that was already in your bylaw that just says, you know, it shall be constructed in a way to maintain the appearance and character of the neighborhood, right, of the lot itself. So we made sure that that language, that existing language, remained in the definition. But everything before that point is text from the Affordable Homes Act.
Now, changes, ours has requirements for owner occupancy and everything, that's all gone,
Correct.
okay?
That's all been removed.
Yeah.
So, excellent segue. Not only has that been removed, but in your, so I'm just gonna scroll back to the original language. So,
When he says original language, he's not talking about the language that was in the previous bylaw, he's talking about the original language that we changed it to.
Okay, the changed original language.
He's talking about the
I'm right,
article,
I'm
how the
focusing on
article
the
was
old language, you're
originally
right.
proposed,
Okay.
yeah.
right,
Yeah, I'm focused, and you're saying that's already history, we have to do this, and now we're changing it again.
right. So we thought we had the accessory apartment bylaw perfect. But it turns out after we opened the hearing, we heard from folks about these two elements here. So I'm gonna highlight them with the cursor. So there are two items that restrict the number of bedrooms that can be on the lot. First and foremost, number 8, which you can see up on the screen. Hopefully it's, I'll zoom in a little bit more so that folks at home can see that. We felt that the point was made that this could also be in, this could be considered to be not in line with the Affordable Homes Act, which is, again, trying to make accessory dwelling units easier to build, easier to get permitted, all by right, not having owner occupancy, and then we add in a restriction on the number of bedrooms. So we, as staff, are suggesting that you consider removing these two items because they just, as you can see, limit the number of bedrooms on a lot. One based on the size and the other just simply saying that you can only have no more than 4. But we remain, there's text here that remains, that limits the number of bedrooms when you're in the Coastal Pond Overlay District and the Water Resource Protection Overlay District. Those are two restricted districts based on water quality. And so we felt that those two items, number 10 and 11, would be okay to keep in the existing article. However, 8 and 9, just being prohibitions on the number of bedrooms, we didn't feel like that would be seen as something that you'd want to keep. Bless you.
Question, the 10,000 square feet, so if they have a 50 or 60,000 square foot lot, they can have 5 or 6 bedrooms?
Yep,
Okay.
if they're in the water resource.
If, yeah, I'm just, I got it, I just wanted to understand that.
So, put it better way, 8 and 9 we see as overly restrictive. 10 and 11, at least you've got the ability to fall back on an overlay district, which is protecting water quality as being restrictive on the number of bedrooms. So we would suggest that you take out 8 and 9, and so therefore, I'm gonna scroll back down to the red area, whereas this is the new language that we're hoping that you agree with. You can see that those two items are gone. So we've gone from the separate entrance, which is part of the state law. There's no longer the two references to the number of bedrooms being restricted. You just go right to the Coastal Pond Overlay and the Water Resource protection restrictions. Those are the major changes with accessory dwelling units bylaw.
Does the board have any
Yeah,
questions, comments?
Looks good to me.
yeah.
Okay. Public, Bob?
I just have a question for Jed, who's more familiar with the Affordable Homes Act than I am. The bylaw says that it's a minimum rental of 6 months, and then that's what the state statute, not 1 year.
Correct.
Thank you.
So for the record, the Affordable Homes Act recognizes the fact that communities still want to control short-term rentals, and so it allows for that restriction if a community so desires.
Okay. No further questions, so we'll move on.
Okay.
The next one is Article 17, and this is simply a changing of the use table to, instead of accessory apartment, switching it out to accessory dwelling unit.
Right.
I'm assuming there are no questions or comments.
Very simple.
Okay. And then Article 34 is amending section 240-9.5, home occupation.
I'm getting there.
Oh, I know,
I have a question on that.
on home occupation.
On Article 34, why does that require a two-thirds vote?
Because it is not related to creating housing. Anything that creates housing is now a simple majority, where a two-thirds vote is still in place for anything that does not create housing. I think it's all housing. So Article 34, very quickly, this is a human error. We call it a Cornock error. I made the mistake of, as you can see,
Can we quote you? That's the new label we use?
yes, you can quote it. It can be in the paper. It happens. It's rare, but it happens. So we're amending section 9.6. However, I put into the bylaw 9.5 or into the article 9.5, and I did not catch that. Fortunately, staff caught that for me and only made me hear about it once.
That's me.
So the recommendation is quite simple. It's simply just to make that correction throughout the remainder of the article, referring to 9.6 instead of 9.5. So just for the record and to show the folks at home, there's 9.6s. None of the text is changing. 9.6s, and we get to the end, 9.6.
So that would be changed throughout, and,
Correct.
and we have to say that when it's being presented.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. So your recommendation basically just says, make these non-substantive changes, because it is simply just a number that you're changing, and it's just a reference to the zoning bylaw.
Okay, I'm assuming you're going to change the explanation here then to make that little comment. Since
Yes.
it's not in here,
Yes, I can do that.
the
Yep.
explanation.
Yep.
Okay.
And for the record, we did not receive any public comments on the home occupation bylaw. And to go back to the accessory apartments, all we received for public comments on that was the name of the, accessory apartment to accessory dwelling unit, as well as those two sections that we already covered.
Okay. But we have home-based business here. I thought we were calling it home occupation.
Previously called home occupation. And actually, for clarity's sake, it's
Oh, I see.
currently called home occupation, but there's also another use within that bylaw called home-based business.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, home-based service business. And because of that confusing nature of those two things, the intent of this article and this amendment is to just simply call it a home-based business.
Okay.
One category is allowed by right, which is what you see here in general requirements, 9.5B. These are the requirements to allow for a by right home occupation, home-based business. And then further on is where the special permit is required. That used to be called the home-based service business. It is now just a special permit. Trying to just streamline things.
Okay. Do you have any comments, Bob? Okay, so we're all good with this, with the inclusion and the explanation then of changing it to the Scrivener's there, changing it to 9.6.
I do have a question.
Sure.
What brought this up? Is this driven by staff just cleaning up language, or did somebody actually complain about this?
So this is all part of the recodification effort. As you remember, when we did the recodification, there were some substantive changes that we put aside as what we consider to be phase 2.
I got you. Now I understand.
This is part of phase 2.
I just wondered how we got here. It's phase 2. That's the answer. Thank you.
So no comment on 34? Move on?
No.
Well, the comment is to change the explanation
Yes.
to incorporate the Scrivener's error. John, you had a comment?
No, I just said I'm all set, thank you.
Okay, Article 35. And this has to do with the definition of the home-based service business and home occupation. And
I am proud to say that this recommendation simply just asks for town meeting to approve Article 35 as printed in the warrant. 1 out of 6.
Okay.
We'll do better next year. So again, it's very simple.
Okay. So now we're going to circle back to, oh dear, let's see, Article 15, wherever I put it here, there we go. And this is the mixed residential and commercial overlay district,
Correct.
so-called Mr. Cod.
Yes, affectionately known as Mr. Cod. So what I can do is walk through, I'm just gonna scroll down and walk through the amendments or proposed amendments in your recommendation so that you understand where we've come and some of the new language. Okay, so here begins the recommendation itself. There are no proposed changes to the purpose section. However, there is, our first change, proposed change for your consideration, is the red text is seen on the screen. I'll just read it for the record. So in the circumstance where the mixed residential and commercial overlay district overlays a lot that is divided between 2 zones, only a portion of which is in the B1, B2, or BR district, the entire lot shall be eligible for the provisions of this overlay district. So, said better with pictures. Essentially, what that says is anytime a lot is within the mixed residential and commercial overlay district, and it just so happens to be split zoned between, for example, so let's take this guy. Not a great example, but it's the first one I found. So as you can see, there's 2 zoning districts here, GR district, and we've got the B2 district. This lot in its entirety is in the Mr. Cod district, so you're seeing that in green. The underlying is the red, that's the B2, this is the GR. So in this circumstance, the entire lot would be eligible as a Mr. Cod application.
Can you give us the address of that thing? I can't quite make it out from,
359 Main. So,
Got it.
right at the corner of Shore Street.
yep, I know. I
Okay.
got it now. I couldn't see Shore Street. I couldn't read it, but now I got it.
So the basic premise here is that Mr. Cod or a Mr. Cod applicant is not eligible in the GR district. It's only eligible or only overlays the B1, B2, and the BR district. So in this case, one might say, well, this small corner or this small triangle is not eligible to have a building or any sort of use that's allowed in the Mr. Cod district. You'd have to basically fit it all into the business district, which is right here, right? It's this line, outlines the district itself. This new language basically says the entire lot is eligible to be built on as a Mr. Cod applicant, right? So as a mixed-use development or a multifamily development can use the entire lot to not only calculate the density for the number of residential units, but also use the entire lot to build on. Questions?
I thought we were discussing, maybe I missed one meeting, that we would use it in the calculations, but not the actual use. And now you're saying the use is, they can build on it.
Right.
I don't have a problem with that, that just is a nuance for my,
It's different
Understanding.
from the way we've handled things before with split zoning.
oh, I know, I've had it, this has been a nightmare.
Right.
So again, just for your consideration, let's see, the next change. So this is an important one. So I've highlighted in yellow simply because there's a conflict in the language that is currently in there, right? So right now, we've added language to the definition section, which is what you're looking up on the screen. In a mixed-use development, commercial accommodation shall not be an eligible non-residential use for inclusion in a mixed-use development project, right? So in a building that's mixed-use, commercial accommodations can't be one of the commercial uses. Now, I say it's a conflict because, and I'm gonna sort of jump around a little bit here, but at the last meeting, you remember that exercise that we went through in terms of allowing special permit uses from the underlying zoning district to be allowed in the Mr. Cod district. One of those uses that was a quote-unquote maybe was commercial accommodations. So we have two things. The bylaw right now says you can't have it, and then this one says, yes, you can, but it's by special permit. So once you close the hearing, it's important that you deliberate about this particular topic, because we need to clear that up before it goes to town meeting, okay? Questions? None? So then in the application section, this new text here, which I'm just hovering over, simply articulates the fact that you are now you're also allowing special permit uses within that underlying zoning district. It makes it clear, so I'm gonna zoom out just a little so you can see the whole table. It makes it clear in A that the use table that you're seeing on the screen are those allowed special permit uses, and importantly, which is really important here, is that only in those particular districts, as shown in the use table, are those special permits allowed. That is to say, as an example, if a applicant comes forward in a Mr. Cod application, wants to do mixed use and wants to do a class, let's call it a class 2 restaurant, and they just happen to be in a B2 zoning district, they can't do that through a special permit. They can't do it at all, because the underlying zoning district only allows a class 2 by special permit in the B1 district. So hopefully that's clear. So what we're trying to do is not create an overlay district that completely demolishes what's allowed in the underlying zoning district by either by right or by special permit. We're just trying to respect, if you want to allow special permit uses, respect the rules of the underlying zoning district and just carry them forward. Questions?
A little bit, this only applies to Mr. Cod. This does not apply to where we have B2 and B3. Well, B2 is Mr. Cod, but not areas, all areas, let's say areas that aren't included in Mr. Cod, they're not sewer.
Right. Exactly.
Okay, that's what I'm talking about. So having the use still has to be in those zones, it still has to be in the zone that it's approved, like in B2, instead of an agricultural zone.
Correct. And in those districts which are not in a Mr. Cod overlay, it would revert back to a special permit through the zoning board of appeals, which it is currently in that underlying zoning district. This just allows you to, as an example, allow a certain type of restaurant in a mixed-use building in a Mr. Cod application and make an applicant only come to one board rather than going to zoning board for the special permit for the restaurant and the planning board for a Mr. Cod application. You want to consolidate that to one board.
I think that's the right thing to do.
I'm going to move on just simply to cover the rest of the edits, and then we can talk a little bit about how you want to handle these things. So again, this language here essentially just makes it clear that the mixed-use developments and the multifamily developments are only allowed in the Mr. Cod development, or Mr. Cod district, because those are definitions included only within that district, and therefore they can only be allowed there. So then in development intensity, under mixed use development, as you can see in B, essentially what that says is when you're calculating and adding the residential and non-residential uses together in a mixed-use building, the non-residential shall have no limit, and it shall not impact the density of the residential calculation. So the commercial can be as much as you can fit on the lot, provided an applicant wants to do that, but it can't impact the density calculation of the residential, which is 20 units per 40,000 square feet of upland.
And this I questioned when I read it too, because it's almost like it's double dipping when you say that. You could fit,
It's not necessarily double dipping unless you're, and again, we'll get back to it with the commercial accommodations, because commercial accommodations has a specific set of rules that allows for certain number of units based on the lot size, where a, common retail establishment doesn't have those rules. It is controlled by dimensional requirements, setbacks, building height, lot coverage, parking requirements. Those are sort of the guardrails for retail, but there's nothing that says you can only have X amount of square feet based on the lot size that you have.
So all the setbacks and parking and everything is really what controls that use?
Exactly.
Okay.
So it just tries to make that clear. In the dimensional regulations, this is where a lot of the rubber hits the road, if you will. This comment, the 6,000 square foot amendment was suggested by Attorney Ahmed, which came after we identified that a number of properties would not be eligible as a Mr. Cod applicant based on the fact that their lot sizes are too small, right? So your current language says that your minimum lot size has to be 10,000 square feet. Now, we did an analysis, we identified 64 properties that just were under 10,000 square feet and would never be a Mr. Cod applicant unless they combine them, right? But the 6,000 square feet gets you to a point where a lot of those properties, if not all, would then be eligible for a certain number of units. So the suggestion is reduce that square footage and allow for more properties to be eligible as a Mr. Cod applicant, which we agree with.
Can you give us an example of not a specific one, but let's say a 8,000 square foot lot would it get an extra housing unit? I haven't thought it through, but you
Right.
obviously have, so.
Yeah, so the 20 units per 40,000 square feet, you need roughly 2,000 square foot per unit. So if you've got a 6,000 foot lot, you've got 3 units.
3 units, that's what I was looking for.
Right.
Thank you. That clarified it in my mind. That's what I needed to hear.
Specific
that.
example, I started to sweat a little bit. I do not have one.
Well, John, I should have said general example, excuse me.
Did you see that?
I didn't mean to pin it down.
So, okay, and then in maximum lot coverage, we added a statement here that allows the board to allow an applicant to exceed the maximum lot coverages by special permit. Simply just make the statement that you have the ability to allow for that lot coverage to be exceeded if you deem it appropriate. Building height, letter A, shorten the sentence, make it easy to understand. The building height of the principal structure shall be no less than 2 stories. Plain and simple. It used to have additional language in there. Trying to remember exactly what it said, but the idea here was to just make it clear that building height of the principal structure or structures shall be no less than 2 stories. Then in number 4, in the setback area, again, the idea here is to create some clarity as it relates to side yard and rear setbacks when it abuts a residential use, not a residential property, a residential use. So one that's currently there. And that setback shall be 20 feet. Before it was residential property.
Can I ask a question?
go ahead.
So you're saying if the other property is business zone, but they have a residential use on it, that's what you're saying where this kicks in? Not how it's zoned, but how it's being, so if it's a single-family
being
home
used.
on a one-story, single-family home on a business property, this kicks in,
Right.
because they're in a butter.
Right, because as you know, it's
Doesn't exist that
Ex-
much, I just wanna understand.
parking requirements. This isn't a very big change, so this is language that's already existing in your zoning bylaw. It's in section 14, chapter 14. So we've just taken a lot of that language back from that and made it clear that, again, in number 1, here's the parking requirement for residential and non-residential. And then the location of which, right? So this is number 2, so it shall be either on the premises or located within 300 feet. It shall be separated by a street having a right-of-way width of 60 feet. Again, existing language in your bylaw already. Then in number 3, the planning board will have the ability by special permit to allow the parking within 5 feet of the property line and in the front yard, which is what you folks had suggested at the last meeting. And then the last one is the flexibility component. So you can grant a reduction in the residential parking requirement, provided that, and you can see the text on the screen, essentially if an applicant provides some sort of mitigating strategies, shuttle service, shared parking, some good, well thought out strategies to allow for the parking reduction and to share or create off-site parking, you've got that flexibility. And moving on into,
I think I have a question, and I think I brought this up before, and I'm sorry I didn't really get but I had a memory of a parking requirement of a retail definition between regular retail and gross retail, or basically a store that doesn't have people not walking up aisles, but just a storefront, that they required less parking. I thought there was something that was 200 square feet.
well, so
So we would be changing that.
so this text right here, item
It's
number
just
1.
changing to 300 period, right?
It is original language. It's existing in the bylaw currently. So your residential requirement is 1 space per unit, and your non-residential is 1 per 300 square feet. That's original language. That's from when I first started here.
You've never seen a 200 square foot for something called, I thought it was gross retail?
That would just require more parking spaces, and we've talked a lot about not having too much asphalt on a property.
Yeah.
It was actually less. It was
Well,
going from 300 to 200 is what I'm talking about.
But then you're requiring more spaces because
Yeah, you require more spaces if you go to
denominator
200.
is smaller.
Works out better, okay.
Exactly.
There was something there, it's just going away, and you're right, John.
Yeah.
Better. Sorry.
No, it's okay. And then in 7.5I, this is the long-term occupancy. Again, this new language or adjusted language attempts to make it clear that the mixed-use development and the multifamily development permitted through this section, all of the housing units, including the market rate, as well as the affordable, as you can see up on the screen, shall be rented in terms of 12 months or more, and so that nothing can be rented for periods less than 12 months. All residential
Yeah,
units.
that's perfect.
Minor changes to the procedure section. Again, Attorney Ahmet caught some important items here, so just clarifying that it is the planning board's public meeting, that the notice shall be published in the local newspaper. So we had some existing language, but it's been made better. And then this one in particular, I think, is very important. So I'm just going to touch upon it, and I meant to highlight this in yellow simply because it does reference the variance section. Now, we started off on this path considering or allowing the ability for you to allow a variance or grant a variance for certain dimensional issues. After spending some time with that, hearing some public comments, staff felt it was important to remove that variance language because there's a lot of flexibility already cooked into the bylaw itself. And you start getting into rules and regulations as to who can actually issue a variance. So we just felt it best to just remove all of that material or that language. And so what I would suggest to you is that it would just say, notwithstanding the foregoing, whenever an applicant seeks a special permit in connection with the development under Mr. Cod, the procedural requirements, including the notice requirements, shall follow the ones in chapter 48. So we would simply remove the variance language, because there is no
It's a
such.
special permit now.
Just a special permit. Yeah. Just want to be clear. Then in 7.5K, in your decisions, as you can see, the red text on the screen will not have adverse effects that which overbalance the beneficial effects of either the neighborhood or the town in view of the particular characteristics of the site. Again, just clarifying language that these are the findings that the board needs to make when considering a Mr. Cod application. So it would be A, B, and C, and essentially in C, you're just determining that this new proposal doesn't overbalance or doesn't have detrimental impacts that overbalance the beneficial impacts or the beneficial effects of this new application,
That's a
or
very
the characteristics
difficult,
of the site, I should say.
that's a very difficult thing to enforce.
It's a finding that you have to make as part of the process. And that is it for the new language, the red text. So I will turn it over to you, Madam Chair, for public comment.
Well, first I want to know, does the board have any
Or-
questions on this?
I think it looks great.
I can't believe the amount of hard work it's
I know.
he's had to do
Do you
this.
have any comments or questions, Paul?
No.
Okay.
Yep, yep. I
Oh,
just,
Bob,
Oh,
okay.
I thought he was good.
when it comes to building height, I will never vote for anything 40 or 50 feet. I just won't.
I don't like it
And I've-
either.
I've
I'd
just-
rather, if we're
I've
gonna have
just
something.
seen too many places go down this road,
Yeah.
and it's really ruined the character and the,
Well, and the other problem too is if we were going to do something like that, I'd rather have it on, say, the 5-acre parcel and you step it back and up. So it's not right there and providing a wind tunnel effect. I agree with you, Bob, on that.
I still,
Yeah. Okay.
Just for clarification, Bob wasn't here last week, but we had a member from the audience with the same comments. And my comment was that there's a couple of structures being built on Main Street right now
Yeah.
of that height,
yeah.
of which this board didn't approve, the zoning board didn't approve, no board in the town of Falmouth approved, but they're being built anyway.
Yeah.
And without any input by the town, none.
Yeah, I know that.
So at least this gives us some kind of input if it comes in front of us. That was my comment to that, so.
Well, it's hard to envision something, and that one
Yeah.
on Main Street is 56 feet tall.
Yeah. And-
Two of them.
And you
Well,
can
there
see
will be
how
two,
it's
yeah.
changed.
The other one isn't 56, that's the other
He's saying
side.
two side by side with the street.
Yeah, side by side with the street between is,
Right, they're gonna be side by side.
oh, those are two, yeah, right.
I'm just saying that with this, if it ever comes to this, at least we have some input. Because things are gonna get built whether,
But we're basically saying if you wanna do this, you gotta go 40B. If they wanna go that height.
well, that's what we.
And
that's-
now,
that is-
the zoning, because of Safe Harbor, doesn't have to give it to us.
Safe harbor is only temporary.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not forever.
I'd just like to point out that there were only a few parcels that are over that acreage that could go up to 50 feet. Most of the parcels in Mr. Cod wouldn't allow that. They're not big enough to allow that. So I think is that what it's highlighted? So there's only 5 parcels.
From what I understood, they were along Davis Straits,
So
mostly.
those are the lighter
mostly
green
in-
ones, is that
mostly
what
in
they're showing us?
T-ticket.
The ones
They're
that-
the yellow outlined ones.
Yeah.
So very quickly, this is.
Oh, the ones that are right there.
Yep, so this is T-Ticket Park, I believe that's what it's called. So clearly, you're not gonna have buildings there. This is the mall,
Mall.
Stop and Shop, the Falmouth Plaza, and then the Housing Authority. Those are the only parcels that are over 5 acres in the mixed residential and commercial overlay district. Those are the only ones that would be eligible to go up to 50 feet. And
Thanks for pointing that out, appreciate
that
it.
would not. So the others, and keep in mind, the other category is above 2 acres, and that would be allowed up to 40 feet, I believe. Double check I just want to make sure I'm saying that right.
which is not very much beyond what we already allow at 35.
I don't want a mistake.
Yeah,
Yep.
40 feet on parcels of 5 acres or greater. And hold on, maybe it's.
So the 2 acre, there are more 2 acre properties, but again, to Chairman Kerfoot's comment, currently your limit is 35, so you'd be allowing a building to go up to 40 feet. Now, you wouldn't be counting the mechanicals and those types of things unless, you know, they exceed 5 feet. So let's go back to that language, because I don't want to misstate that. So height limitations, and this is an important component here. Zoom in so that everybody can see. So height limitations shall not apply to appurtenances defined as television antennas, chimneys, spires, elevator and stair bulkheads, mechanical equipment and shielding, fire code access requirements, or minor extensions of the building strictly ornamental in nature, provided that all of the foregoing do not exceed 5 feet over the height of the building. So if they exceed the 5 feet, then they automatically count towards the building height. So as long as they don't exceed that, they don't count. So again, it would be essentially 40-foot building that could have 5 feet worth of mechanical equipment on the top,
Or an elevator shaft.
or an elevator shaft.
Or a roof deck with a railing around it.
And again, with site plan review, you have the ability to negotiate with an applicant, but are there ways that we can hide that elevator shaft? Can we put it in the rear where people can't see it? So I think you've got some flexibility baked into the bylaw for that. And every time that they exceed the building height, the allowed building height, they have to then set back that lot line that abuts a residential use by 2 feet. Every 2 feet per 1 foot of increase. So if you're proposing a 40-foot building, that's 5 feet over the allowable building height. That's 10 feet that they would have to set it back from a residential use. In addition to the current setbacks that are already, just for clarity.
Complicated.
It is complicated. Does anybody else on the board have any questions or comments? Okay, Bob, you had something you wanted to say?
Thanks. First of all, I want to thank Jed for sending me copies of what he's displayed. Mid-afternoon, it was really helpful to have, and I had a chance to take a look through it. And I think that the board has made tremendous progress with the help of the staff. And I think we're really close to having good bylaws. But I have a few comments, of course. I'll just throw in once again about commercial accommodations. And, you know, the opportunity to have a hotel in town and its interplay with Mr. Cod, I mean, it might come up. I don't feel real strongly about it, except that I think that if somebody wanted to do a Mr. Cod project with commercial accommodations, they shouldn't be precluded from doing it. They could do under the bylaws that exist today, you could have commercial accommodations along with housing at 6 units per acre. So, I mean, we already have this mix of commercial accommodations possible with housing. And if somebody wants to build a hotel, I think it might be a better project if they also include some housing with it. And a special permit would be required. So you can call it double dipping or not. The issue is it's something that fits on the lot, and does the planning board feel that the benefits of the project outweigh any detriments? So I don't think you should restrict yourselves. And as I said before, although it's true that we have specific density requirements for commercial accommodations, you can also have very high impact restaurants with loads of seats that create more traffic, in some cases without needing a special permit under this. So I don't think that it would be a bad thing to allow the commercial accommodations, because frankly, I think that a hotel in the commercial, in the Mr. Cod district would be a good idea if somebody wants to do that. Okay.
Wish we had it on Lantern Lane.
I just want to point out what's really just an editing error that we might as well fix, and that is, show you,
You guys want me to turn the light out?
in 7.5H, it's not one of the new changes, it's actually, sorry to take a little time. This word including right here, that should just come out. That made sense before the clause was added before it, which starts such as, but not limited to, and then it's a list of things. The including isn't necessary anymore, and it's sort of confusing. Did you catch what I'm saying? Thanks. On the long-term occupancy provision, I think the intent is that it only applies to units approved as rental units. As you know, the Mr. Cod bylaw allows creation of for-sale housing. This paragraph doesn't adequately distinguish. It says for any mixed-use development or multifamily development, all housing units, whether rented to eligible household or not, shall be available for rent on terms not less than 12 months. I don't think you're meaning to restrict the purchasers of market rate for sale housing. And that's easily fixed by just where it says all housing units. I think it could say all housing units approved as rentals. So there's no intention to prevent the owner of a unit that is a for sale unit from being able to rent that unit.
Why not just
You
put
catch
all
that?
rental housing units, Bob, instead of a longer clause?
Well, only because approved as rental housing means it's under Mr. Cod as a rental project, which has a different percentage of required units. It's going to be clear in the site plan review decision. Are these rental units or are these
Okay.
housing? And that's why,
I needed to
whereas
understand.
somebody could
Yeah.
own a unit but want to rent it, and that's not what we mean by a rental unit. You follow me? That's
do.
why I
That's why I
chose,
questioned. I needed to understand.
that's why I chose that language. In the reference to the variance here, this paragraph isn't clear whether the planning board or the planning board or the Board of Appeals is the variance granting authority. I have no problem with the Board of Appeals being the variance granting authority. First of all, variances are going to be very rare, particular circumstances. It doesn't bother me so much that it might not be the planning board as the permit granting authority. But the state, although the town bylaw specifies that the variance granting authority in Falmouth is the Board of Appeals, the state statute just says permit granting authority. So it can be either way, but I just don't think it's clear, and I don't want that issue to come up, when in the middle of a case. So I somehow to deal with that. And that might be.
I just need my memory refreshed a little bit. When they are for sale units, the count they get, what is it?
50%.
50%. And by my calculation, that pretty much kills them from doing it from an economic sense anyway, right? I just want to make sure that's still what's going on. I mean, that doesn't make financial sense. But if they did, if they want to do it, they could. Okay, I just need to make sure that was my recollection.
And then I have what I guess is the biggest concern I have, and I've had it before. We have a paragraph about non-conforming structures and lots, so let's go find it. It's this paragraph. So we're talking about non-conforming structures. And it says that the building height, we're talking about an existing structure, existing non-conforming structure, that the building height may be, can't be waived. It says dimensional provisions of this section, except minimum lot size and building height, may be waived by a special permit. So it says you can't waive that. As I said before, I don't think anybody really means that. And so our best example, one we're all familiar with, one I'm very familiar with, is the nursing home. The nursing home is more than 35 feet high. I forget exactly how much, not too much more, but it's more than 35 feet high. So it's a non-conforming building. Why in the world would you not allow a Mr. Cod project at that property, which has been allowed, of course? And that brings me to another concern, especially if this language doesn't come out. I mean, there's no reason to accept building height as a nonconformance that, one can work with. Because, as I've said before, the permit for 545 Main Street is a special permit. And if this bylaw passes, and they haven't begun construction by June 4 of next year, which is a year from the date of the special permit, then these provisions will apply to that project, and it can be argued that that project has to fail because it doesn't meet the building height requirement. So it's really important, and I think there will be, if that project is threatened by this change, which I don't think is what anybody intends, there will be opposition to this article being passed by people who don't want that project to fail. So there's no reason to have that building height be an exception. And that may be the only building, existing non-conforming building, with this issue in the Mr. Cod district. There might be one other building downtown at Walker Street. Maybe that building's over 35 feet high. But I urge you to just take that out. In general, nonconformances should be protected. If you have a nonconforming structure based on dimensions, height, or setbacks, you ought to be able to work with that nonconforming structure. You shouldn't lose the possibility. Any questions?
Any comments?
Do you have any questions?
What Bob has said here?
No, I do think that, it's worth considering just removing except
Yeah.
minimum lot size and building height. Because I see the point, and you still have controls within here that would control the building height and the minimum lot size. So I think you still have the guardrails. You would just be allowing for these structures and lots to be considered as a Mr. Cod applicant. So I think it's a good comment.
So you're gonna remove it right now?
I wish I could, but not at a
I know, we can't forget it.
I guess the only other thing I want to say, and and no doubt that my colleague over here is going to say something about it. And really addressed to you, Bob, the concern about the height. You know, keep in mind that 56-foot tall building under construction has virtually no setbacks. It's right up to the street. It's close to the property line. I mean, it is, that's not what we're talking about. We're really talking about considerable setbacks. And I think, first of all, 50 is different than 56. And I think it's going to feel, such a building on a big piece of property, whether, you know, set at the mall or set at Falmouth Plaza, I think can work. Thanks.
The board have any comments or questions of what we've heard so far?
So how does that,
Freeman, you wanted to say something?
Sure. Again, for the record, Peter Freeman, attorney in Barnstable. And thank you, Bob, for that comment and speaking to all of the board. But as you folks said last week, this process has been 2 years, and you invited feedback from interested persons and companies, including developers. And the reality is that the existing Mr. Cod didn't work for many developers. Yes, I represent one in particular, Falmouth Plaza, but it didn't work because of the height limitation. And as you may know, I do mainly affordable housing projects, not just 40B, but a lot of 40B, but I do it all over. And the reality is, with the economics, that the height really is not the height, what the height translate into the number of stories. And that's true here too. So it would be really a killer to not have that height. And I would just echo what Bob said, because it would only apply in a few places. It would only be along one side of, it would only be in all likelihood one building that would be set back very far under these provisions for the setback increase, which my client actually wanted me to comment. He misunderstood it, misread it. So just so I will be true to him, he wanted to ask that additional increment of 2 feet, additional setback above the required, be reduced a bit, but I'm not going to push that candidly because the height itself is more important. I can't let go of the height. And it's with that setback and with, you know, a good design, which you will see, you know, it really isn't going to create a wind tunnel when it's not going to be lot after lot after lot that could benefit from the 50-foot height. So I just, on that point, I leave you with that. It really, we think, is reasonable and can still have a good design that doesn't create detriment to the aesthetics of the town, which we all value. I'm a Cape Codder, but it is crucial. It's just plain crucial. So everything else, by the way, I applaud you folks and Jed and the staff. I mean, I think it's come so far, and I think it's really just about there. My next questions, which are questions and then perhaps comments, but on the 240-7.5D with the mixed-use development where it now has the special permit chart, the preface to that confuses me when it says mixed-use developments and multifamily developments that comply with the provisions of the section shall be allowed as of right. But then it says in the red, but subject to site plan review, that's fine. And if a mixed-use development includes a non-residential use, obviously the business types of uses, that require a special permit under Article 6 of the zoning bylaw, then also subject to issuance of a special permit from the planning board. And I pulled up Article 6, although it's hard to read, but I think basically the commercial uses don't require a special permit, so I think it's okay. The only thing that could be considered, and I would view this as a problem, a factor here, is a special permit is required for mixed use of residential and commercial mixed use, which says any combination of community service business, which is broad and what the plaza certainly has and will have, and commercial uses permitted by right or special permit, together with multifamily use, that requires a special permit. Now, I think the saving grace is, it does say multifamily use with density not to exceed 6 dwelling units. So this wouldn't really be applicable to the mixed use that's going to take place under Mr. Cod. But I just want to make sure so that people don't get tripped up, that that provision wouldn't trigger by itself the special permit requirement under Mr. Cod. I mean, the whole underlying purpose was to allow the mixed use. So I just stopped there for comment from Jed, as well as, you know, you folks.
So very briefly, I don't think it would. And so, you know, just to sort of show that, you know, well, why don't we do it this way? Go here. Do you mind? I'm just so we're just going to go to the zoning bylaw and that particular section. And we are looking for
Page 38 starts.
yeah, right here. So this is what was being referred to, again, that any combination of community service, business, commercial, et cetera, and multifamily use with the density not to exceed 6 units per acre. So essentially, that's mixed use with your multifamily use. I don't see that that conflicts with the Mr. Cod wording, because now you're in a totally different category of combining commercial with 20 units per acre. So that's sort of, these are the categories that we've tried to build into the use table. So you've got not exceeding 6 units per acre, then you've got 6 to 8 units per acre, and that's allowed in the business redevelopment district. And then you would have a fourth category, which is your Mr. Cod district. So now you're up to 20 units per acre, and you're allowed to combine that with commercial uses. So I don't see the conflict.
Okay, thank you. I read it that way as well. I just wanted to point it out, you know, so that everybody is on the same page. So then, on the same page, not the actual Article 6, but going back to your proposed amendments, I'm still confused by what you and... Yeah, sure. Yeah.
And you're here.
Thanks. So I may be dense, I apologize, but I'm still confused by this, and I was here last time for the discussion about this, which, you know, I think was a good discussion. But it seems to say that the uses in this table, based on whichever of the 3 business districts it's in, will still require a special permit, even though the whole intent was for especially mixed use to be as of right, except for site plan review. So the second one, under where it's yellow for commercial accommodations, but commercial or business shopping center existing, which applies to not just my client's property, but others, it does call for a special permit from the planning board, of course, but to me, candidly, if this means that it's no longer as of right for the mixed-use redevelopment, that's antithetical to what I thought the whole purpose of the Mr. Cod is. So I'm hoping that you would delete that as one of the uses that will now require a special permit. The other uses you discussed, and I understand why you had reservations about them. Some you just eliminated outright. Some of them are going to call for a special permit. But I don't think you really intend to and want to create the situation where the redevelopment of some of these plazas will require a special permit. Again, the existing Mr. Cod, although there were shortcomings, which is what you're addressing, allows it as of right, except for the site plan review. So certainly, Jed, your thoughts, but that's so crucial because it would take away the certainty that both my client and any commercial owner would want, which again, I do believe was one of the primary motivating forces for Mr. Cod to begin with. Thanks.
Yes, very quickly, if I may, that would be one of the sections or the lines that I would recommend that the board consider deleting, because I do think it creates that conflict which Attorney Freeman has just articulated. And perhaps that's where you want to start your deliberations once you close the hearing.
Any other comments or questions? Okay, then we need to move on.
Matt raised
But-
his hand for a second.
Oh, Bob, I'm sorry, I didn't see that.
Well, I didn't raise my hand till after you had looked away. This issue might be addressed by, certainly with the commercial or business shopping center, just say new commercial business or shopping center, because I think the intent actually for all of these ought to be for new projects. You know, if there's an existing restaurant and they want to add affordable housing, then I don't know whether you really think that requires a special permit. I understand there's an issue of having the business next to the restaurant, but, you know, this is the business district. We have business, you know, property lines with businesses on each side of it and so on. The whole purpose of this is to encourage the creation of the affordable housing. So maybe it should be simply made clear, maybe in the previous sentence, that this use table applies to new uses and that existing uses can remain.
My profession really is strange, because you can go back and forth so long, and Bob is a guru in zoning, and I'm not sure I'm quite as much of a guru, although I do tons of it. But the problem I have with that is, then you get into the sub-level of definition for what's the existing use. The plaza is existing use, but if Staples is gone and it becomes a furniture store, well, that could be deemed not an existing use. So you have to be more careful, I think, about drafting, which I think is a potential nightmare. And, you know, the concern about new versus existing is eliminated if you just do what Jed suggested, just eliminate it completely. Then you could still, you know, accommodate new uses as well as the existing uses as of right, subject to the site plan review thing. So I just think it's safer and more in keeping with what I believe your goals are to just eliminate that line. Thanks.
Time to move on now? Okay. Okay, the next one on our list is non-conforming uses, structures, and lots.
All right, very good. So this one, I'm scrolling through because this one also has a recommendation that includes some amendments, so I'll go to the red text. It's a long article. Okay, so it begins here. So the good news is there aren't a lot of suggested changes in this. The first is, as Attorney Ament mentioned at the last meeting, in the purpose statement, in the applicability section, the suggested edit is to change it to say it is the purpose of the bylaw to regulate non-conforming structures, uses, and lots. Before it was essentially saying to, I forget the exact word, but not allow them basically, or to not allow their continuance. It's not the exact wording, but the point I'm trying to make here is.
Make them go away eventually.
Essentially,
That's
yes.
Something like that, yeah.
Right. And so this is basically just saying the purpose is to regulate them. The next change is related to not substantially more detrimental. As you remember, there were some subcategories here, and I should note, included in your packet are the comments, all of the comments from Attorney Ament and from Attorney Freeman. And in that is a lot of information related to specifically this section. I'm sure Attorney Ament will comment on it, but essentially what we've proposed is the elimination of those three separate categories and simplifying the language as proposed and as agreed to by our consultants, Bob Mitchell and Bob Ritchie, as shown on the screen. Next item is, so let me just show you what section this is in. This is the 10.3 existing non-conforming structures and uses. So this is 10.3A, number 2. And as you can see, it's a change in the language highlighted in red. I'll read it for the record. A non-conforming use of a structure may be changed to another non-conforming use by special permit, provided the permit granting authority finds the new use is not substantially more detrimental to the neighborhood than the existing use. Again, there was previous language that indicated not allowing a change of use, I believe, and so this essentially allows for that, a reversion, a change to the language that was proposed. And then I believe there are two more sections. This is 10.4B, talking about applicability. Again, this idea is shown up on the screen. No lot reconfigured under this section shall lose its buildability status, and no lot shall be made non-conforming. There was a minor text change there, and this reverts back to the original language, which was, or I should say, the current language, which is in the bylaw as of today. The last one is in, yes, use abandonment. And I think there are two sections here. There's one that I'm, yeah, it is, great. So in use abandonment, as you can see, the red text, there was additional text here that our consultants and Attorney Ament had noted. It was two words that just need to be removed so that the sentence flowed properly. So very minor, non-substantive type change. I am remiss because I did not include one of the comments that Attorney Ament had highlighted in the last meeting, and it's related to this section here, number 3, and it's related to a non-conforming use or structure. And so the comment was that structure was never included in this section before. It had been put in through the recodification process. I've consulted with both Attorney Bob Mitchell and Bob Ritchie. They have agreed that removing the references to structure within this section here, so see if I can do it with the mouse. So anywhere it says structure, here and here, would be removed. So structure, structure, and structure will all be taken out. It will just relate to a non-conforming use. And that, in itself, I believe, just scrolling to make
So
sure. Yeah.
that's just saying you can't abandon a structure,
You can't abandon a use. Well, you can abandon a use.
but not the structure. If it's there, it's there.
Right.
Okay, that makes sense.
Right,
It's there. It's the roof's holding rain out, it's working, yeah.
right.
That makes sense. I understand.
So overall, the changes to the non-conforming section were minor, as you could see. All the red text was minor in nature. But we felt like we addressed all the comments that we received, and they were confirmed by our consultants. That's the summary.
Okay. Comments from the board?
Unbelievable.
The only comment that I had intended to make was about those words, or structure. I'm very appreciative of the effort that everybody has made on this, and at times I felt pretty discouraged when I received Jed's work this afternoon and looked through it. It was really uplifting to see, how improved this was. And so while Jed just said there were minor changes, I think the changes are major and terrific. So I congratulate everybody and hope that town meeting doesn't have too many questions.
Would that be Jed and staff?
Say again?
Jed and staff?
Of course. Of course.
Thank you.
In the working group.
In the working group?
Yeah.
Bob, I want to thank you in particular for all of the effort you have put in to making this a way better product.
Think what it would cost if you were billing us.
So with that, I think you've got all your public comments and all of the summaries, so I think you're at a point where you may want to consider closing.
Close the hearing. May I have a motion?
Move to close?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
You've got some work to do.
Well,
Well, I've got all night, so
yeah.
What time are we on?
Don't you have a deadline tomorrow?
We do.
Good luck.
That's why he said all night.
Yep.
The one thing that you really wanted to go through, Jed, as I recall, was on that table, special permit uses allowed.
Yes. So, again, I think, here's what I recommend. I recommend that you strike this line here, the commercial shopping center. And again, the reason for that is simply because, and I want to make this really clear. So what I tried to do for you is, this is your current zoning bylaw, is pull up all of your special permit uses. So to Bob, Attorney Amund's point, including this whole idea of a new commercial shopping center, you're technically already the permitting granting authority for that. But I do think it creates a conflict in the Mr. Cod bylaw, because the intent is to allow commercial, or I should say just non-residential use, mixed with residential ideally, but also to allow just simply residential. So I don't think you need to have it in your special permit use table, because I do think it presents a potential conflict down the road. In terms of other uses that I would suggest that you consider getting rid of, would be a parking facility, simply because you have tried your best to create a situation in the Mr. Cod district that allows for less parking. Again, allowing a parking facility to be combined with a residential development doesn't seem like the kind of thing that you'd be interested in having, because again, you're trying to reduce the amount of parking in the district. Motor vehicle sales and rentals, not an ideal commercial or non-residential use to be combined. And again, I understand the argument with the commercial accommodations, I do. My only, I guess, counter to that is, if it weren't for the section in your zoning bylaw that specifically limits the number of units based on the lot size for commercial accommodations, I would say, sure, I think it makes sense. It just creates an awful lot of interpretation issues related to, are you allowed to use that lot size twice to calculate your commercial accommodation units and then go back and do your residential? It's just something that I advise you to stay away from. So with that, I mean, those are the uses within the table that I would suggest that you consider removing at currently.
There are more that I would suggest.
Okay.
Okay, so we've got the first three lines that you're suggesting do away with.
Yep.
Parking facility, do away with. I don't know how you could have recreation centers in there. You could have a theater, potentially,
You could.
but you're certainly not gonna have a bowling alley or a skating rink.
I mean, you could have a little one. I mean, the noise itself, I can't imagine
No,
how
I
you
can't
would
imagine
mitigate
that we'd
that,
wanna
but-
have that as part of it.
Yeah.
But what's the difference between, well, I can see theaters and motion picture shows, but you could just use the word theater in there. It could be stage productions, it could be motion pictures. That would be a potential, I think, that we could leave in there. RDNA technology, take it out. I don't think we should have scientific research in there either, because that's not the purpose of this. It's for housing and mixed use. So there are a lot of things. The things I would leave in there would be outdoor display that goes with the shops. A private club could certainly be in there. I'm not sure what kind of restaurant you would want in there. Potentially, yeah, fast food, but it depends. You're
Right.
not gonna have a drive-through fast food. So there are very few that I'd leave in under special permit uses that are allowed.
Yeah, it sounds like it comes down to the private club, maybe the recreation center, maybe. The restaurants, be it fast food, and your
The outdoor
classes that you
display
see
of, or
and the
storage of
outdoor
goods.
display, yeah.
I don't know what the rest of the board feels. Yeah, John?
So we already have 2 service stations in this town that have housing above their buildings, one in East Falmouth and one on Main Street across from Dunkin' Donuts. I don't see any issues with that. We want housing, and if someone's willing to add it to their business, why not?
So just for clarity's sake, this would be vehicle sales or rental. So just those 2 categories. It wouldn't be service stations. So
He's saying
Well, so-
service stations.
service stations,
With or without ancillary service business facilities, I mean, what is that?
That'd be repair.
perhaps
And I'm
for
saying
the,
both these, well, the one in East Falmouth does repair, and they still have people living up above, employees. I mean, that's what they
Well, that's
originally.
up for the board to debate on that. I don't know.
It may not even happen, but I would hate to limit
I'd hate to
someone.
cross it out.
Well, are we limiting it? We're saying it could be by a special permit, so we still can decide it, right?
correct. Yeah,
We're not saying you can't have it.
yeah.
If you can prove to us that it's really important, and this board agrees with John, we could do it,
Right. Unless you don't list it in the table.
unless
then
it's
you-
not listed at all.
Okay.
I'm trying to say, I would rather leave it on the table.
You'd rather leave that in.
I would,
Okay.
So they would have to come to us for a special.
or this board.
Okay.
We may not be here
Yeah.
True. Right, the planning board.
20 years from now or whatever. I mean, hopefully the bylaw will be, but
I don't think we'll be here.
Well, if somebody-
it might still be on this board.
Yeah.
if you were going through it, what would you leave there? What would you-
Well, I
Or
would,
what would you take away is probably the way it should be stated.
well, I agree with what you said, other than I wouldn't take that out.
Okay,
that
so
one
leave
item.
that one in.
Yes. And, you know, we've heard testimony in here about axe throwing and bowling alleys and noise, and that's from people next door, let alone living up above it. So,
It's noisy.
I doubt that would ever even happen, but
Yeah. So, does the board agree?
So
With my
let's
list
run
of-
down what you're gonna cross out again.
Okay, cross out commercial accommodations, commercial or business shopping center. And I crossed out the motor vehicle sales because I don't see big showrooms and stuff as they have. But John's particularly interested in service stations.
Yeah.
So we can change that to something else, I suspect. Parking facility, cross out. We've got a problem with recreation centers. You don't necessarily want skating rinks or a bowling alley, it's quite noisy. But you might just want to keep it not recreation centers, you could have theaters.
I like keeping theaters.
You do like keeping
I like
theaters?
theater, yeah.
Yeah, so we can do that. Cross out RDNA technology. And I don't know what kinds of restaurants you all would like to see in there. Cross out scientific research.
Just for the restaurant discussion, Jed, could you walk through examples to refresh everyone's memory on class 1, the 2, and 3, what they are? The definition for them, I have a vague recollection, but I'd rather hear it specifically.
So when calculating the type of class,
This is the hardest thing I've ever seen in our zoning thing, by the way.
yeah. So to determine your class of restaurant, it's based on the categories that you see up on the left-hand side, the indicator. So again, it's advertising size, the consumption, hours of operation, the number of seats, takeout sales, timing of payment, type of container, type of service. So a person or an applicant needs to identify in column A, B, or C which one of those the restaurant is proposing to have. And then you essentially create a point, you circle the number of points, add up all those points. When you're above,
75.
there we go. So class 1 is anything above 199 points, then you've got a range for class 2, a range for class 3, and a range for class 4. So class 4 restaurants, 300 or more, is a situation where you're essentially all over here. right? So your advertising size is your national, your consumption is all off-premise, hours of operation is all day long, number of seats is 51 or more, so a very large restaurant, right? Whereas a smaller restaurant, class 1, is in your column A, that's where your least amount of points. So your number of seats is 25 or less. You have table service. The containers are all reusable. So it's a interesting,
Why would we want to eliminate a restaurant from having apartments up above? Why would we want to have any concern with that? We are,
Yeah.
You're saying, why would we limit it to class 1, 2, or 3? Just say
Why-
restaurant.
just let them have apartments up above that, that's what they want to do. I mean, people have to have their staff live somewhere, and maybe even the owners want to live upstairs, I mean,
I think I believe this was all brought up to stop fast food restaurants in Woods Hole.
I think you're
Well,
right.
Oh, the categorization?
Yeah.
Interesting.
I mean, have you ever seen this in any other town?
No,
I
this-
believe that this was contrived by our predecessors.
yeah, but we're here with this now, so.
I know,
I don't care the reason why, I don't see any reason not to have an apartment or two above a restaurant, if that's what they want to do.
Neither do I.
So what you're saying, am I hearing this right? Just put the word restaurant in there and forget about the classifications, whether it's fast food, sit down, whatever.
Exactly.
So I would not do that, and the reason for that is because now what you're doing is you're setting new rules
Okay,
related to special permit uses for the Mr. Cod district.
so just not limited in any of these categories.
Well, essentially just mirror what is currently allowed in the underlying districts and just bring that up to the Mr.
Okay.
Cod district, that's all.
Okay.
Don't make any changes to it, because now you're creating different rules for different places, and it gets,
So unless we want to get rid of this table across all zoning areas, we leave it alone.
no,
You're talking about for restaurants, Jim.
just for the restaurants.
Well, that's what I'm talking about,
Yeah,
restaurants.
Yes, yes.
I'm just saying, I've never seen this classification of class 1, class 2, class 3, this point for that. I've never seen, it's unbelievable.
Yeah, and you can see it takes a little bit of time to figure out what type of class of a restaurant it is.
And, just for those who haven't done it before, the building commissioner can modify it by simply saying, well, why don't you sell another product here, okay? Instead of doing it, why don't you also sell cookies or something else? And it changes the classification. And I've seen them do it.
Let's not get distracted here.
Well, I'm just saying it's the most convoluted thing I've ever seen.
I understand that, let's just.
Okay, you're right, John, you're
I
right.
So
got
do you
Dancing
want to
with-
keep in,
Dancing with the Stars is on tonight, so.
Okay, let's get the Dancing with the Stars. I'm sorry to bring that up.
For some people, it's important.
I'm sorry, you're right. I just think it's the most convoluted thing I've ever seen. But I'm okay with it.
Okay.
That's fine.
Thank you.
Shut up.
so we'll leave all the restaurants in there, including fast food? Is that what you're saying?
Yes,
Okay.
We can't get an argument at town meeting doing that, because it's already there.
but you can stand up on time meeting
I'm
floor
not
and-
gonna go.
and dissertate the
No, I'm not
different
gonna go. I just,
reasons for these restaurant categories.
So were there any other things that we needed to discuss in here?
So I have, for the record, I've got motor vehicle sales as allowed, or as remaining in the table.
Yeah.
Motor vehicle sales, outdoor display of goods, the private club. So I'm gonna skip over the recreation centers for a second. Restaurant, be it all the classes that are shown, and then fast food, right?
and scientific research. Didn't we
No,
say
that stays out.
That goes.
It's gone.
Yep, that was suggested to be removed.
Removed. Oh, so you're talking about what's staying, okay.
Yes. So the only issue I have with the idea of the recreation centers and amending that, again, is that you know, we try not to amend any of those uses. So if you want to allow theaters, you've got to be able to allow the bowling alleys and the skating rinks, which are currently allowed in the underlying zoning district as special permits. So I would suggest either you ixnay it altogether, or you keep it and live with it.
It's not important.
Then I'd say, take it out.
Yeah, take it out.
All
take
right.
it out.
So we've got motor vehicle sales, outdoor display of goods, private clubs, and restaurant, and fast food restaurant.
Yeah.
Cool. All right.
So does anybody else have, was there anything else we needed to discuss?
I don't think so. I think that covers,
What we're doing with commercial accommodations,
so we're precluding it. It is not an allowed
Okay.
non-residential use.
that's what I thought, okay.
So I'm just gonna scroll through just to make sure. So this is okay. This is the language about, you know, the split zone lot. When you have that, you don't need to fit all that use on that business zone. You can
Right.
fit it on the entire lot. Everyone's okay with that?
Yes,
Okay. We covered the use table. Any issues with this language here, which just does not restrict the amount of commercial space that can be combined, or non-residential space that can be combined with the residential?
That bothers me, the double dipping aspect of it, which it could be. How you can calculate it.
Well, and so I think it's worth pointing out, because in your current bylaw, in the use table that we were just looking at when Attorney Freeman was making the comments that he was about the categories, you can currently do that now. There's no limitation on, in the B1, B2, and B3 district, when you wanna do multifamily use combined with the non-residential use, there's no limit on the amount of non-residential square footage that you can create, other than lot coverage, setbacks, dimensional issues.
Okay,
That is the guardrail that protects that.
okay.
Minimum lot size, 6,000 square feet, that makes sense.
yes,
The ability to exceed the maximum lot coverages by special permit. And so these two categories, they work for everyone. Again, for a lot less than 20,000 square feet, which there are a good number of them, allow for that 90% lot coverage, because it's such a small lot. And then anything over, it's the 70%, which is currently the limit in the Mr. Cod district as of today. No issues there, okay. Building height, minimum of 2 stories. Do you want to consider reducing the requirement of an applicant when they exceed the building height, the amount of setback that is required based on the number of feet that they exceed? Said in another way, when an applicant proposes a building height of, say, 50 feet, that's 15 feet higher than what's currently allowed. They are required to move the building away from a residential use by an increment of 2 feet for every 1 foot that they exceed the building height. So in that case, it would be 15 times 2, which is 30 feet.
total of 30 feet.
Correct. In addition to the current setbacks that are already into the bylaw itself. So what you heard from Attorney Freeman was, maybe you want to consider relaxing that. I just want to make sure that the board talks about that before.
Just for discussion purpose, right now, we have a setback for parking, it's like only 5 feet
Yes. From a property line,
from a property line.
and if they're within 5 feet, they have to seek a special permit from you folks. I personally feel like the setback requirement makes sense. So when you create a taller building, the idea is to move that away from an existing residential use, so not to overburden that residential use with
So would it be,
So
in
50
that
foot-
case, would it be a 30 plus 10, or a total of 30, or
30.
30 plus 5, or?
It would,
Setback's 10 now?
on your
So-
side,
So it's
Side.
40-foot setback if you want to go 50 feet tall.
right, so like, if you're looking at these two sections, so you'd have to combine this requirement with the current requirement for your setback, so it depends on the, it'd be a side yard setback is 10 feet unless it abuts a residential use, which is now a 20-foot setback. So we went through this exercise at the last meeting with Kimco's property. Their
This
building,
now becomes 50?
correct, that would be a 50-foot setback requirement. Now, what is important to understand is that there is some language in here that allows for a non-conforming lot to ask for a waiver by special permit. So you would have, I believe that that applicant would have the ability to seek a special permit from you to waive the setback requirement, the base setback requirement, and get that setback back to 30 feet instead of the 50. So I see that there's an option, there's some flexibility baked into that.
Yeah, I'd be in favor of leaving
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
letting them
Yeah,
have the option.
I think it makes sense.
I mean, I think a 30-foot setback is a lot.
Yes, it is.
And I think that, I mean, I understand Bob's position, but we have some really big parcels of land here that we've got to make into housing, and they want height.
Right.
So there's got to be a compromise someplace, so I'm willing to go with that.
I think we covered the parking at the last meeting. Parking seems to be okay with the one item that Attorney Alment mentioned, just getting rid of the word including.
I got a
We-
question for Jed. So if a developer needed to get the height,
Yeah.
they could put their parking on the residential side of the building, get their setbacks there, and get their height,
Yep. Yes, sir.
if they design the lot appropriately.
Yep.
And that's what we need to give them, is some way to do it.
And we could require from site plan that they appropriately screen it
Right,
from,
with trees or whatever.
Right.
Exactly. Ways to deal with it.
Just see, I'm trying to embrace how it's done. And I think that's I understand people's objection to the height, but I think when you start getting big setbacks, it does mitigate it quite a bit.
We may want to consider potentially an example for town meeting, if that does come up. So I think we can probably put our fingers on an example locally of tall building that's set back from the road. I'm thinking of a couple in my mind that we can measure. and
Give us
just-
one, what do you think?
Well, the Admiralty Inn down on Scranton Ave, and that's set back quite a distance, and it's a tall building.
Lots, yeah.
And then the Housing Authority, that's another tall building. So there's a couple I think we could try at least measure to figure out what that setback actually looks like and how tall the building is, so it gives people perspective. So this long-term occupancy, I agree with Bob. I think that the Attorney Alment, I should say, I think the additional language here is smart. All housing units that are approved as residential units, I think that's a wise addition. Any changes to this procedure section? Other than we're gonna be taking out variance, because that's no longer applicable. It was originally, but that's been removed. Anything else? That's it for Mr. Cod.
I think so.
Great,
Yeah.
Yes.
great. So we're gonna go ahead and make those changes. We will submit, and then I'm assuming the non-conforming section was okay with you folks too, but we can walk through those amendments if you want. But they were I agree with Attorney Alment. I think they were major in terms of, the coordination, but again, minor in substance. Any issues with those?
No,
Excellent. So that is it for your zoning articles.
Okay.
So,
So we've closed the hearing.
yes,
Now we have to take it one by one to recommend it as amended to the warrant, correct?
correct.
Okay, so I'm going to need motions on all of these babies here.
Can't you do them as a blanket?
No, we can't. So Article 15, mixed residential and commercial overlay district. May I have a motion, please, to recommend it to the warrant as amended?
I move.
Second?
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Article 16, accessory dwelling
Dwelling
units.
Yeah.
It's late.
It says apartment, so she
I
can't.
know, I crossed it out, but I didn't in my
In your
eyes. on
mind,
it.
yeah.
Okay, so accessory dwelling units. A motion, please,
So moved,
Second.
as amended.
as amended, yep.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Article 17, use tables for accessory apartments as amended.
I move as amended?
Yep, second.
Okay, moved and seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Article 34, home occupation, as amended.
So moved.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Article 35, definitions.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And that was not amended, it was just a new definition, wasn't it?
Correct, there was no
That's what I
amendment there.
thought, yeah. Article 36, non-conforming uses, structures, and lots
So moved.
as amended.
Second?
All
Aye.
in favor?
Aye.
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 Phew.
Congratulations.
And I think we need to congratulate our staff too, for all of this hard work.
Yep,
Oh my
fantastic.
Teamwork makes the dream work.
Unbelievable,
Oh.
great job.
gosh, yes.
Really, really great job.
And the consultants,
Yes, and our
Yes.
consultants,
And,
Extremely
and-
helpful.
and
the working group.
growth that I've seen in both of you during this process is pretty incredible. How,
Gosh, yeah.
really is amazing.
And the working group.
Yeah, well, they're not here, but these.
Yeah, well, the working group, my first notes go back to 2009.
Hello.
No, but
I'm just glad there are people that like them that like to do that kind of work, because I certainly don't want to.
It's tedious,
Yeah,
very tedious.
boy.
Okay, we have now planning board discussion. We have something in here that is Zero Broken Bow ZBA referral. And we've got the plan in here, and we can just all take it home and look at it, because they need the referral by our next meeting.
Let's look at
And
it.
there are a couple of things that, going over this with Melinda, they've got some two-bedroom, some three-bedroom units. We do not know where they are. They have not provided any kind of landscaping plan to us. The pictures that they show of the units are lovely, and they show landscaping around it, but there's nothing to indicate what they might do. So Melinda can give us a little bit of this, where it is and stuff, but I'd recommend you take it home and take a good look at it.
Okay. So we're not gonna deal with it tonight.
No, it's just an introduction to it. Well, we don't have time to really go over it.
You
Nine
can,
o'clock already.
so,
It says right on the referral, who's the applicant?
the applicant is Broken Bow Residence LLC.
But the person's name is William F. Curley, the
Right.
third.
Bill Curley, and I believe Nick Marioni is representing him at the ZBA hearings, which I believe open in November. So just like a lot of the last 40B referrals that have come through in the past couple of months, same kind of thing. We'll walk through the plans. If you've got comments that you want to provide to the ZBA, we'll record those. If you want to take this up at the next meeting as well, we can include it on the agenda right before the deadline for the submission. So it's,
Yeah,
I'd like to take it up at the next meeting.
I would
I actually
too.
didn't prepare for this. I didn't catch this.
totally fine.
yeah. No, I'd rather take it up at the next meeting too.
Dancing with the Stars is on in 3 minutes, so
Yeah,
we've got to go.
consider this an introduction. Okay?
Now, how do you know what time it starts?
Yeah,
We've got a
you caught me.
planning department report.
Well,
I
he
think
can't
we-
watch it. How long a drive do you have home? You're gonna miss the whole
I
thing.
watched it on the ride. No. So nothing to report other than, obvious, things that we're working on with zoning
Sure.
amendments and whatnot.
Committee reports. None?
I have one.
Oh,
Last night, Amy Lowell, the wastewater superintendent, made a presentation to the select board at Lawrence School. And she talked about what has happened with the outfall design since the last town meeting in November. And is asked her to give me a PowerPoint. I'm not gonna go through it now, you can look at it at your leisure, but the important thing is they've been dealing with the regulatory agencies with very positive results to date. And the overall schedule is this winter, they're gonna be doing marine borings. The baseline data collection should be completed next year. They're gonna apply for permits during the period 24 to 28. They expect a draft environmental report in late '25, early '26. complete environmental impact report of the outfall 2028 and construction 29 to 32. So overall, that's the overall schedule that they're talking about, but they're optimistic that things are moving very well.
A quick question, I have no idea what a marine boring is.
It's a subsurface area.
In the water? So they go out?
They go out and they raise the rig up out of the water and they drill down a certain depth to see what the soil
They
is
go
like.
down 10 feet in the water and then drill down 20 feet, see what's underneath there.
They do that for the directional drilling.
Yep.
Which is what they did over in Mill Road several years ago over Christmas. They went out with directional drilling, and went out and worked all through Christmas and New Year's. So, any rate, read it at your leisure.
Okay, announcements and future agenda items. Any?
I have one.
Okay,
So Stephanie Matson, our sustainability coordinator, asked me to announce this event. And once a flyer is finalized, we're gonna share it with you folks. But Eversource is creating a 10-year plan for electric sector modernization. So they're calling it their Electric Sector Modernization Plan. Say it once, not 5 times fast.
What does that
So there'll
mean?
be some speakers at the Herman Room over at the Public Library on Monday, October 28th at noon. And it's a lot about, as you can imagine, what does the electric grid look like in the next 10 years, and how are they planning to modernize it? So it's a really important event. She asked us to help spread the word, so we're doing so. Like I said, when the flyer is finalized, we'll give it to you in your correspondence, but it'll likely be at the next meeting.
okay.
October 28th at the library, what time?
Noon.
Noon.
Also known as high noon.
And
Donuts?
I couldn't speak to that.
we have our correspondence within the packets here that were handed out. And our next meeting is.
That's incorrect. It's October 22nd.
Yeah.
So we get a break?
No, it's October 22nd.
October 22nd.
After, no, when's town meeting, with the 18th?
November, when is it?
18th?
18th,
18th.
What is?
town meeting.
Oh, November, yeah.
While we're on the subject, may I ask the board about your future meeting schedule? Because obviously with town meeting being the 18th and likely the 19th, you are planning to meet on the 12th and the 26th. Now, the 26th is 2 days away from Thanksgiving. So I wanted to make sure that you were okay with meeting that close to Thanksgiving, because if not, we need to inform applicants that that is not gonna be an available time slot. So do we see any conflicts with that?
As far as I know, we're gonna stay here for Thanksgiving.
I don't.
Okay. Okay. Sounds like the 26th is okay.
Yeah,
Great.
I think Charlotte.
When is town meeting?
Here for Thanksgiving too.
The 18th.
November?
Yeah.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Thank you. We are adjourned.